Imagine walking down your apartment hallway late at night, just trying to drag your tired body to bed after another 12-hour shift. The lights flicker, the air smells like bleach from the janitor's mop, and all you want is silence. Then you hear it. The faintest cry. Thin, desperate. The kind of sound that pulls at something primal in your chest. That's how my story began. With a cry I almost ignored. But if I had kept walking, if I had locked my door and shoved in my earbuds, I would have missed the moment that changed my entire life. Before I go on, let me pause. If you're listening right now, hit that like button and subscribe, because this one is going to split opinions right down the middle. You're either going to call me selfish, or you're going to say I was the only one who ever did right by him, and I want to see where you land. My name is Rachel Garner. I'm 51 years old now, but at the time, I was just a 22-year-old nursing assistant living in Columbus, Ohio. I came from nothing. Middle kid of 5, raised by a mother who smoked through every pregnancy, and a father who disappeared before I could write my name. By 22, I had no car, no savings, and no family to fall back on. Just a cramped studio apartment with water stains on the ceiling, a futon that squeaked every time I shifted, and a paycheck that vanished the moment I handed over rent. So when I heard that cry in the hallway, I thought maybe it was a cat. Or worse, some prank. Tenants in my building pulled stunts like that. Kids leaving junk in the halls, drunks banging on doors at 3 a.m. But this wasn't a cat. I followed the sound and found him. A baby, maybe 3 days old, wrapped in nothing but a dirty hospital blanket, left right there between the trash chute and the vending machine. His skin was bluish from the cold. His lips trembled. I froze. You know that weird double voice that happens in your head when something unthinkable is happening? One voice said, "Rachel, call 911 right now. Don't touch him." The other said, "Pick him up. If you don't, he's going to die." My body chose before my brain could think. I scooped him up. He was so light, I thought I might crush him just by holding him. I carried him into my apartment, heart hammering, mind spinning. I called the police. I called the hospital. They told me social services would take it from there. But here's the thing. I couldn't let go. For weeks, I visited that baby, first at the hospital, then at the foster care center. I learned his file number before I learned his given name. No one came forward to claim him. No grandmother, no father, no mother, nothing. It's almost embarrassing to admit now, but I started praying. Me, the girl who hadn't set foot in church since she was 10. I prayed, "God, if you don't want me to keep him, then send someone else. But if no one comes, then let me be the one." And no one came. So when the state asked if I'd consider fostering him, I said yes, even though my bank account was in the double digits and my landlord had just threatened eviction. That boy became mine. I named him Ethan. Raising him wasn't a Hallmark movie. It was hell sometimes. Diapers I couldn't afford, sitters who quit without warning, bosses who looked at me like I was poison because I had a baby strapped to my chest when they needed an open availability worker. But Ethan, he was different. Even as a toddler, he had this steady gaze, like he could see through every fake smile, every lie. By 6, he was reading above grade level. By 10, he was fixing my busted coffee maker with a butter knife. By 16, he was taller than me and talking about scholarships. And I'll admit, there were nights I lay awake terrified that someone would show up, slam a paper down on the table, and say, "He isn't yours. Hand him over." But 18 years went by. No one came. Until one did. I'll never forget the morning. It was winter, and I was pouring my second cup of coffee before work. The knock at the door was sharp, official. When I opened it,
Two people stood there, both in pressed suits, both holding briefcases. "Mrs. Garner?" the man asked. "Yes." "We're representing Miss Victoria Hale. We're here regarding her son." My stomach dropped. Victoria Hale. If you live in Ohio, you know the name. Real estate mogul, multi-millionaire, owner of half the luxury apartments downtown. I'd seen her on billboards, smiling with teeth so white they looked like pearls. And she was claiming Ethan. The lawyers explained, fast, clinical, like I was just a footnote in some larger play. Their client had been a young mother when she gave birth. She'd been pressured into abandoning the baby, but now she wanted him back. I just stood there, coffee cooling in my hand. My heart was pounding so loud, I almost didn't hear when one lawyer said, "Of course, if you cooperate, Miss Hale is willing to compensate you generously for your time and care." Compensate me. Like 18 years of scraped knees, school supplies, and nights crying when Ethan was in the ER with asthma attacks could be wrapped up with a check. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "Ethan isn't property. You can't buy him." The lawyer just smiled. "We'll let the court decide." That night, I sat Ethan down. He was 18 and a half then. I thought he'd panic or lash out or maybe even want to go with her. I mean, she was rich. She could give him cars, vacations, anything I never could. But Ethan just listened quietly. His jaw clenched. When I was done, he leaned back and said, "So she abandoned me for 18 years, and now that I'm grown, she thinks she can just claim me?" I swallowed hard. "It looks that way." "Then let's see what she says in court."
The day we walked into that courtroom, my whole body felt like it was on fire. It wasn't even hot outside. It was one of those gray Ohio mornings, the kind where the air smells like snow even if none's fallen yet. But inside, I was sweating through my blouse, fingers shaking so badly I kept dropping my pen. I kept telling myself, "You're not on trial. You're not the one who abandoned a newborn in a hallway. You're the one who saved him." But that didn't stop the shame from clawing at me. Maybe it was the way people looked at me when I walked in with Ethan. Maybe it was the way Victoria Hale's lawyers straightened their jackets, like we were some embarrassing reminder of what she wanted erased from her past. And then there she was, Victoria Hale. I'd only ever seen her on billboards and glossy magazines, but in person, she was taller than I expected. Sleek black dress, diamonds in her ears that could have paid my rent for a year. Her hair, perfect. Her nails, perfect. Her smile, perfect. Except when her eyes landed on Ethan, that smile faltered. Just for a second, but I saw it. And Ethan saw it too. His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. The hearing started with the lawyers doing what lawyers do, throwing words around like biological rights and maternal bonds. I sat there at the defendant's table, clutching my notes, even though nobody was going to call on me to read them. I couldn't stop glancing at Ethan. He sat tall, shoulders back, but his knee was bouncing under the table. Only I knew that little tell, how he always did it before big tests or doctor's visits. Victoria's lawyer painted her like a saint, a young woman pressured into a terrible choice, now successful, stable, and ready to reclaim the child she never stopped loving. I almost laughed, out loud, but I didn't. Because I knew if I did, they'd spin it like I was bitter, jealous, small. Then it was our turn. My lawyer, God bless her, she was one of those overworked legal aid attorneys who probably had 3 other cases that same morning. She did her best. She pointed out the abandonment, the 18 years of silence, the fact that Ethan was a legal adult now. But I could feel it in the room. Money was power, and Victoria Hale had more of it than I could ever dream of. During a recess, she approached us. Not her lawyers, not an assistant, her. "Ethan," she said softly, like she'd been saying his name his whole life. "You look just like me when I was your age." Ethan stiffened. "I look like myself." Her smile flickered. "Of course. I just meant it's uncanny. Your jawline, your eyes, genetics are remarkable." I couldn't hold back. "Genetics don't raise a child," I snapped. Her gaze slid to me then, cold, sharp, the kind of look people give gum stuck to their shoe. "Rachel," she said, smooth as butter, "you've done an admirable job, truly, but you must understand, he deserves more. More opportunities, more connections, more than love?" I cut in. Her lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Love doesn't pay tuition." I wanted to slap her, right there in the hallway, in front of the vending machines and the buzzing fluorescent lights, but I didn't. Because Ethan was watching, and I refused to let him see me lose control. Instead, I walked away. My legs were trembling, but I walked. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the peeling laminate, listening to the old fridge hum. Every corner of that apartment told the story of our lives. The dent in the wall when Ethan tried indoor soccer at 7, the faded poster of the Cleveland Cavaliers he refused to take down even after LeBron left, the stack of community college brochures he'd circled in pen. And I thought, what if she takes him? What if all of this, every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every sacrifice is erased in one court order? I cried until my throat burned. At 3 a.m, I heard Ethan's door open. His footsteps were heavy, like he'd been pacing. He stood in the doorway, messy hair falling in his eyes. He said, "You okay, Mom?" God, Mom, that word. I tried to smile, wipe my cheeks. "Yeah, baby, just thinking." He came over, put a hand on my shoulder. His hand was bigger than mine now, stronger. He said, "She doesn't get to rewrite history. She doesn't get to swoop in after 18 years and pretend she was there." I nodded, but inside, the fear was still eating me alive. The next day in court, things got worse. Victoria's team brought witnesses. A psychiatrist who claimed Ethan might struggle with identity confusion if he didn't connect with his biological mother. A financial advisor who detailed the advantages of being tied to Victoria's estate. And then, this is what made my blood boil, they introduced photos. Baby clothes she'd supposedly bought, a crib she claimed she had set up back then, pictures of her in a hospital gown cradling him as a newborn. The narrative was clear. She was the victim. I was just the placeholder. I wanted to scream, to stand up and shout, "Where were you when he had the flu so bad I thought he might choke in his sleep? Where were you when he won his first science fair ribbon and no one else showed up to clap? Where were you when he asked me why he didn't look like me and I had to explain adoption with tears in my eyes?" But the rules of court are cruel. I had to sit there, silent, while they dismantled my motherhood piece by piece. Then it was Ethan's turn. The judge asked if he wanted to make a statement. Ethan stood. His suit was a little too big. It had been borrowed from a church friend, but he looked taller than I ever seen him. He cleared his throat. His voice cracked at first, then it steadied. He said, "I've listened to all of this, and I respect the court, but I need to say something. And it's not about money or genetics or opportunities." Every head turned. Even Victoria leaned forward, her diamonds catching the light. Ethan looked right at her. "You call yourself my mother, but where were you the night I broke my arm falling off my bike? Where were you when I had nightmares so bad I couldn't breathe? Where were you when Mom worked double shifts and still made it to every parent-teacher conference?" The room went silent. You could hear the judge's pen stop scratching. Ethan continued, "Genetics don't make a parent. Love does. And Rachel Garner is my mother, period. My chest swelled. Tears blurred my vision. But then he turned, looked at the judge, and said something I didn't expect. Something that made my stomach twist with both pride and fear. He said, "And I want to prove it in a way that leaves no doubt. That's why I brought evidence." He reached into his folder. The judge's eyebrows shot up. "Evidence?" "Yes, Your Honor. Something that shows exactly what kind of person Victoria Hale really is." The entire courtroom shifted, whispers rising like a wave. I froze. Evidence? What evidence? He pulled out an envelope and placed it on the clerk's desk. Victoria's face drained of color. For the first time all day, she looked afraid. And me, I sat there, heart pounding, wondering what my son had just done, and whether it was going to save us or destroy us.
The sound of that envelope sliding across the clerk's desk is burned into my memory. It wasn't loud, just a faint scrape against polished wood. But the silence that followed, you could have heard a pin drop. The judge adjusted his glasses, peered down. "Mr. Garner, you're presenting evidence against the petitioner." Ethan nodded, calm as stone. "Yes, Your Honor." I wanted to reach out, grab his sleeve, whisper, "What are you doing?" But something in his face stopped me. His eyes had that same steady fire I'd seen since he was a boy, the one that told me he wasn't acting on impulse. He had thought this through. The clerk opened the envelope, out slid a stack of glossy photographs, followed by a few printed emails. The judge's brow furrowed as he flipped through them. "Explain," he said. Ethan's voice was clear, strong. "These are photographs taken 2 months ago. They show Victoria Hale leaving a private clinic, a clinic that specializes in," he paused, glancing at her, "newborn adoptions." A ripple went through the courtroom. Ethan went on. "And these emails between Ms. Hale and her attorney prove she recently paid that clinic for what she called, quote, a more manageable infant adoption process." My mouth fell open. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was exposing her. Victoria shot up from her chair. "That's a gross misinterpretation." The judge raised a hand. "Sit down, Ms. Hale." But Ethan didn't flinch. He looked straight at her. "You didn't come back for me because you loved me. You came back because you needed a trophy, a headline, something to fix your image after you realized people found out about your private adoptions. You wanted me to be your PR redemption story. But I'm not your accessory. I'm not your project, and I'll never be your son." The words landed like hammer blows. Even her lawyers looked stunned. The judge took the documents, lips pressed tight. "This will be submitted as evidence. We will recess to review." And just like that, the courtroom erupted. The recess dragged on for hours. My lawyer whispered to me that Ethan's evidence could not only kill her case, but possibly open her up to fraud charges. My stomach churned, my hands shook, but under all the fear was something else, something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. When the judge finally returned, he didn't waste time. He banged the gavel once, the sound sharp as thunder. After reviewing the evidence, and given the age of the respondent, this court finds no basis to award any custody, guardianship, or maternal claim to Miss Victoria Hale. He glanced at her, eyes cold. Furthermore, this court recommends investigation into potential fraudulent adoption practices as raised in the submitted exhibits. Victoria's face drained white. The gavel fell again. Case dismissed. I didn't even realize I was crying until Ethan put an arm around me. "It's over, Mom," he whispered. Walking out of that courthouse felt like stepping out from under a mountain I'd been carrying for 18 years. The winter air was biting, but I breathed it deep anyway. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could stand tall. Victoria swept past us on the courthouse steps, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashed. She didn't look at me, not once. But I didn't need her to, because I had already won. Not just in court, but in life. In the days that followed, the media had a field day. Millionaire caught in adoption scandal. Hale's custody bid collapses after son's testimony. Neighbors who used to look at me like I was some charity case now stopped me in the grocery store just to say, "Good for you, Rachel. Good for you." But the sweetest moment wasn't public. It was a week later, at our tiny kitchen table. I was folding laundry, still half worried about bills, still living in the same squeaky apartment. Ethan walked in holding a letter. "Mom," he said, eyes wide, "I got it! Full scholarship, engineering program!" I dropped the towel in my hands. "Ethan, are you serious?" He grinned. "Guess hard work pays better than diamonds." I laughed then, really laughed. The kind that shakes your shoulders and makes your chest ache. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel poor. I didn't feel small. I felt enough. Looking back now, I realized the revenge wasn't in humiliating Victoria in court. It wasn't even in the headlines that dragged her name through the mud. The real revenge was this. She missed it. She missed his first steps, his first words, his first heartbreak. She missed the science fairs, the late-night talks, the victories and the failures. She missed 18 years of a boy who grew into a man I'm proud to call my son. And nothing, no diamonds, no headlines, no lawyers, can ever buy that back. I'm 51 now. Ethan's in college, thriving. He calls me every Sunday just to check in, even if it's just to complain about cafeteria food. Do I still worry? Of course. Money's tight, work is exhausting, and the world never stops throwing curveballs. But I don't carry shame anymore. I don't wonder if I'm enough. Because the boy I found in that hallway all those years ago looked a courtroom full of people in the eye and called me what I always dreamed of hearing. Mom. And for me, that's all the vindication I'll ever need. Sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming or striking back. Sometimes the best revenge is just living long enough to see the truth shine through. If you've ever felt like someone tried to erase your sacrifices, I want you to hear me. They can't. The truth has a way of finding daylight, no matter how long it takes. Thanks for listening to my story. And if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your own story of justice or healing in the comments. Because sometimes the best revenge is becoming the person they never believed you could be.